everybody, and welcome to the Donut Hole, your place where a couple of guys sit around and pontificate. My name's Paul,
And I'm Jason.
and we're coming to you live from our studios here in Nashville. So, Jason, I believe it is St. Patty's Day, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. I just figured that out a few hours ago.
Yes, and I suppose we should probably call Colby up and have him to see what he wants to say here on St. Patty's Day, because he's all about the Irish, you know.
Yeah, I'm sure he's having a good time right now.
I'm sure he is as well. Probably drinking Jameson and green beer and being just a typical twit.
I will say Colby's probably a little better than green beer. He's probably drinking a stout or something.
Anyway, one can only hope, I suppose. But yeah, let's actually talk a little bit about St. Patty's Day and how it really is versus how it is here in America.
Yeah, it's always and of course being in the restaurant business for so many years, it's always one of those you kind of roll your eyes at because all of a sudden everybody claims Irish heritage and really just uses it as an excuse to get wasted.
Yeah, pretty much. So obviously St. Patrick's Day is a real thing. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist at all. But from my understanding, in Ireland, it is it's a religious holiday, and it would be something kind of like it's even a lesser holiday to my understanding than would be Lent.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's or something of that nature. So it's like very overblown here in the United States.
Well, we do have a tendency to Disneyify. I'm going to make up a new word there. All these holidays that are really very minor. Cinco de Mayo, and just blow them way out of proportion.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly the thing. Cinco de Mayo. Everything's about margaritas, Coronas, tacos, sombreros, dressing like Pancho Villa. And St. Patrick's Day is, obviously it's Talk Like a Leprechaun Day.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's and obviously green beer and just, they'll usually have Guinness on special or Jameson on special or something stupid.
Well, we have a long history of making up holidays or blowing them out of proportion. St. Valentine's Day, we've turned into what it is, an excuse for the diamond companies to try to, and the flower companies and the chocolate companies. Mother's Day was basically, we know the story, it was invented by a lady, but the greeting card companies decided to take advantage of that. I mean, so America really does have a long history of kind of overblowing and creating holidays.
Well, then we'll give the Soviet Union a little credit. I believe they're the ones that came up with Women's Day, right?
I did not know that.
Yeah, that was a Soviet. So they got a little bit of blame in there, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, but International Women's Day that was created by the Soviet Union.
Did not know that.
Yeah, fun fact. But yeah, so any of you guys out there celebrating St. Patrick's Day, obviously be safe, don't drink and drive, and the look of the Irish to you.
Yeah. Yeah, just don't get in any fights. Be careful. It's one of those. I would not be out anywhere close to downtown tonight.
Yeah, amateur night.
Yeah,
it's just like New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyway, we're gonna take a quick break and get into some more meat and potatoes of some actual substance. See you then.
Hi, I would like to take a minute to tell you a bit about Hero Song. Hero Song is a 501c3 non-for-profit organization set up to record the music of veterans, active duty, and first responders who also have musical ambitions. Music is great for the soul, and that's what makes us unique and ever so wonderful. Please check them out and consider giving them your support. Again, that's at herosong.org. Thanks.
Alrighty, guys, we're back from the break. So, those of you following the news recently obviously know about the tragic shooting that happened in New Zealand. Anytime that there's a loss of innocent life, it is a tragedy. Any way you slice it. This guy was clearly unhinged. He was a nut job. Regardless of how you feel about Muslims one way or the other, or anybody, indiscriminate murder is not okay, no matter who does it. Whether an individual does it, whether a government does it, whether anybody does it. That is not okay, and that should be punished in society.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in a place where, people come to congregate for religious reasons.
Exactly.
That just even makes it even more heinous.
It does. And heinous is actually a very good word to describe it. It was a heinous act, and I hope all that were involved in the shooting have, swift and very, strong judgment reached and justice can be served.
Mm-hmm.
So, our hearts and I guess you would say thoughts and prayers go out to those that are victims of this. However, on the flip side of this, it does seem that before the last people were actually even cold or dead, even that this started to become politicized.
Yes.
As often happens with a lot of these mass shooting type events, they become politicized by opportunistic people, and it is, in my opinion, frankly, disgusting.
It is. You know, the first part of it is where you get into the blame game of, you know, there is no one to blame except the man or men who committed these crimes. I know they have apprehended more than one person, and they're unsure as to whose roles or what. But with that being said, the man or men, whoever committed these crimes, that is where the sole responsibility lies.
Yeah, and those are the people that should be brought to justice.
Yes. So political pandering and saying that gun manufacturers are responsible, or the people that this man, mentioned in his manifesto are responsible. That is completely ridiculous.
Yeah, I believe he did mention what was it, PewDiePie and Candace Owens, right?
Yes, and Donald Trump.
Yeah, and Donald Trump. None of which share any real responsibility, in my opinion, to this guy's derangement. Obviously, he's deranged. We've seen deranged people do deranged things throughout the globe, whether it is a mass attack of like a mass shooting, or if it's a another type of mass attack, whether it's a stabbing, whether it's a bombing, whether it's whatever. If somebody holds a certain political view, and if you actually look at the primary guy, the guy that live streamed everything, the twit that did that, he if you look at his background, he will say he likes Donald Trump for his being somewhat I'm trying to find the best word to use here, somewhat having somewhat negative connotation towards Islam and what have you.
Right. He thinks that Donald Trump is for white people, basically.
And I don't necessarily see that. In my impression of Trump, again, I'm not the biggest Trump fan. I am a bit of a Trump critic. But I wouldn't say Trump is a pro-white president.
I think Trump's a pro-Trump president.
At the end of the day, I think you're right with that. So I would disagree with him on that. And moreover, but the guy also criticized Trump as well by saying, I don't like his politics.
Correct.
So I like the fact that Trump is a quote-unquote pro-white president, whatever that means, but I don't like his politics. Because clearly, if you actually look at the guy more closely, he is a leftist, and by any stretch of the word. Even those that are sometimes attributed to being quote-unquote alt-right,
right,
are usually like the neo-Nazi types sometimes. And those people are not alt-right. Those are leftists as well. They're a different, violent wing of the left side.
Their racial ideas may be considered far right, because I don't know where that's been in the common nomenclature, but it seems like anybody associated with white supremacy or that kind of thing is classified as far right. But many of their political ideas tend towards socialism.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them even that support Bernie Sanders, and everybody thinks it's this monolithic thing. They're all Republicans. That's not the case. Racist people come in all stripes.
Yeah, and actually sometimes the worst racists come in from the left.
Yeah.
And I would find that, in my opinion, those that would say, certain minority groups need this, that, and the other, special privileges, special rights, they're actually more racist than anybody else. They're more racist than the Klan member who will tell you, how we feel straight to your face.
Yeah, racial pandering to earn votes is disgusting to me, and I think it should be to more people, but it's become such a norm in the U.S. that we just allow it to happen, and nobody thinks anything about it.
Yeah, and in addition to that, the people that say, "Oh, these special groups need these special rights, these special privileges," they also even go to the extent of saying it's basically implying that these people are not good enough to meet the regular standard. They're not good enough or incapable of doing for themselves. So we have to do all this. That is insulting. I know if I were on the receiving end of that, I'd be like, screw you. Which
I think, I believe it was the senior Bush who called that the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, a lot of people and friends of mine that tend to be more on the left don't see it that way. They see it as making up for a system that is skewed against someone. So not everybody that participates in it sees them as lesser, but it definitely a lot of times comes off that way. And a lot of people do. They see, like you said, if you think somebody needs extra help than the next person, you're basically saying that they're less capable.
Yeah, less capable, or there has been a big burden placed in their way, a big roadblock. In the United States currently, all roadblocks have been basically removed.
Yes.
It is up to somebody's individual merit to be able to get out there and do what they need to do.
Yeah.
So there's that. Kind of going off on a bit of a tangent there. So obviously, like we mentioned prior, New Zealand politicians are, I believe, their prime minister or president or head lady in charge, has basically come out saying we're going to ban all semi-automatic firearms. Or actually, I think that was initially what was reported, and then it's now been revised to say all semi-automatic rifles. So those of us in our American audience, I mean, I've done a bit of research in this. If I make a mistake, I don't know, I'm not from New Zealand, so I may make a mistake on the gun laws. I'm pretty sure I got it pretty much down, though. My understanding, in New Zealand, for various firearm type, to own various firearms, every firearm is classified into different categories. And you can own an AR-15 currently at the moment in New Zealand. It's a special license, and it generally has to be a featureless rifle. So for those of you that don't understand that, it means like no pistol grip. So you're going to have like a thumb hole style stock, no bayonet lugs. It would almost be like what we consider like a California rifle prior to them going way wacky in the recent couple of years.
For laymen, probably just kind of like a hunting rifle, but black.
Yeah, basically a black. Yeah, that's
black
probably,
semi-automatic hunting rifle is what it would be like. Yeah,
more or less, with just based off the AR platform chassis.
Yeah.
And however, also in New Zealand, all semi-automatics are, as far as rifles, are limited to a 7-round or less magazine. I've seen a few video clips of this guy's live stream. Obviously, the full intended or the full complete thing of it has been pulled down. But obviously, some news sources have included parts of it, which I intentionally sought those out to see what this guy was doing and what he was using, because I knew this was going to come into the gun control debate that followed as soon as the last shots were fired. And if you look closely, when he's pulling the firearms out of the vehicle, the first thing he grabs obviously is a shotgun. I think he had like a Ruger 1022 off to the side as well. He pushes that off to the side, grabs a shotgun, but clearly right here on the side, there was the AR-15 in question, and inserted into it there was a 40-round magazine. And I believe he also had a couple of 30-round, which in the United States would be considered standard capacity. The 40 being an extended. A couple of standard capacity U.S. standard capacity magazines, both of which are illegal in New Zealand. No civilians allowed to basically have these. So the guy already obviously broke that gun law. Obviously, everyone's saying they're clamoring for this semi-auto rifle ban in New Zealand, and I think this is a really bad idea for multiple reasons. I mean, obviously, this guy's broken several laws. I mean, you want to go into that a little bit too? I don't want to be dominating on this one.
Oh no, that's fine. It's a mindset that I've never understood, is that if we make more laws, maybe he won't break the laws next time. And as we were talking earlier, say you take the murder thing and you discard that. Everybody, murder's illegal, obviously. Okay. So people would say, well, he wouldn't have been able to commit this murder. Well, he was already using illegal firearms. So that's another law he broke.
So we got two.
As you pointed out, you can't carry a loaded firearm and just carry it around with you anywhere in New Zealand. There's 3. You obviously can't shoot a firearm in public. Well, there's 4. So obviously this man has no problem breaking any laws. And I mean, which would be evidenced mostly by the murder.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't like this argument of, well, he wouldn't have been able to do it. Well, where did he get the illegal magazines?
Yeah. That's a good question. Where did he get the illegal magazines? Because they aren't lawful in New Zealand.
No. And, U.S. retailers do not ship overseas.
No, they're pretty adamant about it.
Yeah. So, if he got those magazines, could he have gotten a legal gun? Possibly. So I don't think this would prevent things like this from happening. There's always your Timothy McVeighs who drive a truck full of fertilizer into a building. There's many ways for these evil people to accomplish what they need to accomplish. And depriving your mostly good citizenry of their rights is not a way to go about it.
No, it's really not. And to more prove that point, and this is an example I oftentimes will bring up in the gun control debate, will be in France, machine guns are illegal. Machine guns are not technically illegal in the United States. You can acquire machine guns. It's a very lengthy process. You have to file NFA paperwork. It's expensive as all get out. You're going to spend on many of them more than you would for a house. So they're basically inaccessible to the
Yeah.
average person. But they are there's technically an avenue for it. You never see machine guns in the United States using crimes at all. You haven't for a very long time, since the 1930s, when they were basically outlawed.
Right.
Effectively, not technically, but effectively. But in France, machine guns are outright banned. No civilian can own them whatsoever. Again, if I'm misinterpreting international gun laws, I try to do as much research as I can. It is a bit of a hobby of mine, but again, it's just a hobby. I'm not an attorney, so consult one of those. And if I make a mistake, feel free to comment. But in France, machine guns are illegal, and there was a terrorist attack several years ago where it was the one on the train. It was actually where the American service members who were actually happened to be on the train actually.
Yeah, they made a movie about it recently. Yeah.
But those guys had fully automatic machine guns that are illegal in France.
Actual assault rifles.
Yeah. No, we're gonna get to that in a minute. That's a pet peeve of mine. So yeah, actual assault rifles, machine guns, things that you can't really even get in the United States. Legitimate weapons of war that are illegal in France. They had them in Paris on a train.
Right.
I mean, come on. I mean, how ridiculous is this? But they're banned. I mean, those were illegal. Terrorism's illegal. Murdering people's illegal. Hijacking trains illegal. Machine guns in Paris are illegal. But I mean, is it just like how many charges we can stack up against these guys if they go crazy?
Yeah,
Is that what they're trying to do now? Because I mean, murder in and of itself should be like the number one.
I'm not sure of the logic. I'm really not sure of the logic. And if anybody thinks that getting rid of civilian ownership of guns is going to stop gun crime, just look at, like the example you just said, look at many of these gun crimes all throughout the world. Organized crime, gangs are everywhere. It happens.
Yeah.
And the fact is, there's a black market, and people, if they can't get them legally, if they are so deranged that they're going to go shoot up mosques full of people on their worship day, well, they certainly have no compunction about getting an illegal weapon.
Moreover, if they're that committed, they'll probably manufacture one. I remember I have a friend of mine who's a police officer he was actually a forensics detective with one of the police departments in Taiwan. I'm not going to say which one, but we actually invited me to hang out with him at the station one day when it was a slow time. They just finished up a bunch of investigations and they kind of cleared their docket. They had really not a lot going on that day. So he's like, "Hey, you want to come over and hang out?" So I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll stop by." So we're hanging out in the break room with some of the other detectives and my friend here, and he's actually showing me some of, he takes me to the forensics lab, shows me where they do some of their testing, the ballistics testing and stuff like that. And he's also showing me some of the photographs of some of the confiscated weapons that they had. And almost everything that they had in Taiwan, because gun ownership is virtually illegal in Taiwan as well, were home manufactured firearms. So, I mean, if the guy is deranged enough to do this, and you magically make all the firearms in New Zealand disappear, if he's that deranged, he can still make it happen.
Yeah.
We have these things called hardware stores. You're going to make hardware stores illegal? Well, then nobody can repair their house. I mean, really, at what point do you draw the line?
Well, and to me, the biggest thing that scares me above and beyond the taking away people's rights is obviously the first thing that comes to mind. But above and beyond that is people's attitude that a thing is responsible for the crime, not the person.
Exactly.
The gun is not responsible for the crime. That's a faulty way of thinking. We have to put the blame where the blame squarely lies, and on the individual who did it.
Yeah.
It brings to mind they were having some questioning in Congress about Wells Fargo, which, as we know, got recently in trouble. And as one of these young new Democrats who were interviewing this guy, basically asking them, did they fund such and such company that built oil pipelines?
Oh yeah, this was with AOC, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I saw that.
And it's the same attitude of, why would it be Wells Fargo's fault if the oil pipeline company had a faulty oil pipeline? What does Wells Fargo have to do with that? That's not their responsibility. They simply made a loan to a business.
They made a loan to a business who proposed something and said, "This is our plans. This is what we're planning to do. This is projected revenue. This is this is how we're going to be able to pay you back." The fact that there was either a faulty engineer that I mean, Wells Fargo is not an expert on oil pipelines. If the plan looks good and they show decent projected income earnings, I'm gonna be like, yeah, sure, we'll give you a loan.
That's
Your
not the
business
business that they're in.
exactly.
Yeah.
And who knows? Maybe it was even engineered properly. It could have been a faulty construction. One of the contractors that were working
Yeah.
on it could have cut corners and screwed something up. It could have just been faulty materials, or it could have just been what's called an accident.
And the reason I mentioned this is because I believe recently some of the parents from I believe it's the Newtown massacre are trying to sue Remington.
I've heard that as well.
Which once again, this is just it's getting insane to the point of, say, you come over to my house, Paul, and you fall down my stairs and break your leg. You're going to sue my mortgage company.
Well, maybe I should.
That's the that's the logic they're using here.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing. It's like, you get hit with you get hit by a drunk driver, and it's like, well, now I'm going to sue Budweiser. Budweiser's
Well, not only Budweiser, Ford,
Oh yeah, because that's the car he was driving.
the auto insurance company, Geico. We're also going to serve the bank papers, U.S. Bank, whoever gave them the loan. We're going to take them too.
Yeah.
And that's what this logic, and it's not a good place for society to be.
No, it really isn't.
It's basically saying let's blame, whoever we can blame. That's basically keep going up the chain, deeper pockets, whatnot. That's not right.
Exactly. So, at the end of the day, people are not placing the blame where it ultimately lies, and it ultimately lies with the person who commits these heinous acts.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, anybody that's just deranged enough to go and shoot people on their day of worship when, they're expecting to be calm, at peace, talk to God, reflect on their lives, do what they need to do, get in touch with themselves. They're there with their families. That is heinous. I don't care who it is. It could be anybody. I mean, that is just unacceptable.
Well, I think what people have to realize is that evil exists. They try to find these reasons. There's no reason. The man was just an evil man. It's not if we had stricter gun laws or what could we have done to prevent this. Maybe nothing. Maybe this is just an evil human being.
No, I agree he was an evil man. I disagree. I think there are things that can be done to stop these things. The biggest problem is when a tragedy like this occurs, everybody wants to jump on, and let's face it, nobody likes when innocent people are killed. It's screwed up. It's unacceptable in a civilized society, and nobody likes it. We all want to stop it. Even those of us that are pro-gun, we don't like it. It's not good for anybody. It's not good in any respect. So the biggest problem, though, in my opinion, with this is everybody wants to do something. And I want to do something too. But we can't just jump the gun and go with a knee-jerk reaction, kind of like, oh, we got to do something. We have to do something. Because
I've actually heard people say that. We have to do something.
And yes, we do have to do something, but we can't just jump up and do the first thing that some idiot says. And the biggest problem with it is gun control doesn't work, for starters. Gun control doesn't work. First and foremost. The biggest thing, though, is everybody wants, because I said everybody wants to do something, what ends up happening is gun control is easy, it's cheap, and it makes you feel good. We'll say the general populace. Because it's like, okay, the gun that was used isn't going to be available. Whatever gun that is, whether it's an AR-15, whether it's an AK platform, whether it's an FNFAL, whether it's a H&K G3 whatever platform, these style weapons will not be available. Okay, well then now instead of using that, they're going to use a Remington 870. It doesn't really matter. They're going to use a Glock 17.
Right.
You banned the scary rifles. Now they're going to go to the scary handgun. Now they're going to go to the scary shotgun. Now they're going to go to, we'll skip the guns altogether. We're just going to make pipe bomb and use those. Crazy's going to do crazy. So this isn't going to work. There are things that can be done. The biggest problem is they're slow, they're expensive, and they take time, and they're hard. And those are and nobody's willing to tackle it because nobody has the intestinal fortitude to actually go out and do these things. And that's the biggest problem I have.
Yeah. Which, honestly, and a lot of what I see is good with the Jewish community, because obviously Jews have had to deal with anti-Semitism for a long time, and especially even in the 60s and 70s, from what I understand, violent anti-Semitism. And of course, we just recently had the synagogue murders here, and what was it was Pennsylvania.
I believe so. Yeah, it was up in the Northeast.
But a lot of synagogues have armed security because of these threats, and I think that's something that needs to be done in other places.
Well, that's a good stopgap measure in the meantime while you implement some of the things that can actually enact real change and make real solutions.
Yeah.
Clearly, let's face it, I don't like it, but the NSA is already spying on everybody here in the United States.
Yeah.
It's not that hard to see if people are going and participating in these radical online things. I mean, I hate the fact they're doing it. I think it is a breach of privacy.
Well, and there's also a difference between participation and you went to that website, you're a white nationalist.
Yeah, because sometimes you're doing research on a story, because there is a difference. Like I said, participating on the forums.
Oh, I was going to say I've been to plenty of alt-right websites doing research and just seeing what they've had to say. I've been on insane, black supremacist websites. I mean, all kinds of different ones. So I don't think it needs to go that far as like, oh, these sites are verboten,
No.
But once they start communicating with other people and, and those kind of things.
Exactly.
And honestly, it would be better if the governments weren't involved with that, but the websites themselves. And the websites themselves maybe just say, hey, we're hearing a lot of scary talk coming from this guy, and they could tip off someone.
Yeah, and again, even if you are one of these whack-wing, crazy, nut jobs, I think, obviously they should police themselves to an extent. But like I said, the government's already doing it anyway, so have at it.
Because I know a lot of people have this perception of like, I don't know which website the guy mentioned. Was it 8chan, 4chan,
I think it was,
16chan? I don't know.
Yeah, 4chan is what they call it.
I'm not sure if 4chan's still around. I think they may. Oh, they are?
Oh, yeah.
But I've seen all kinds of stuff come out of 4chan. I'm not sure if I've ever directly visited 4chan. I'm not sure. I may have.
I actually did recently, just doing a little bit of research for.
But it's funny how people have this perception of like it's just this crazy white supremacist website. Well, it's a lot like Reddit, except just a little more extreme. Like half of it's meme making.
Well, moreover, 4chan actually has. It's also 4chan originally started out as Japanese anime otaku culture crap.
Yeah, yeah. But they're just like Reddit or any other place like that where they have subgroups that people go there to. It just happens that Poll is their political subgroup, which does seem to be very right wing white nationalist kind of thing. But the rest of it is not that, and people just have the perception of like, oh yeah, they're evil. They must be associated with that. So there's a little bit of that going on too. Is that people don't understand. When they hear, oh, they're on 4chan, oh my God, that's a scary right-wing website. Well, it's really not. It's only kind of a subsection of a subsection.
But that aside, so that's one thing that can be done is obviously governments are already monitoring online traffic. They could monitor it where it matters, for starters. So there's that. There's also doing a bit more of a background check on some people. I mean, I have no problem with a background check. We get it done on us already, as it is.
I pass them all the time.
I do too.
I just had to get one to get a part-time job. That's
and it's becoming a thing. I think I've had a background check probably upwards of 100 times at this point.
Oh, I've had tons. Yeah, I've had tons.
I've just had another one recently done because I just recently submitted my paperwork for my security license.
Yep, I just had one done for a part-time 3-day-a-week job.
Yeah,
I mean that's that's the way the world is now.
So a background check, obviously, into people's character, especially if they police get a tip off, they need to look into the stuff. It's not that hard to actually go through and really do a deep dive into somebody's background. And a quick monitoring of this guy's social network would have obviously popped up. Oh, hey, this is what it is.
Yeah.
This guy's a nut job.
Which is also why I'm for the companies that, the online companies doing a lot of this self-monitoring, because that's not really breaking anybody's rights. That's not the government monitoring them, because these companies run the websites. They have the right to monitor their own website.
Exactly.
And then they could perhaps tip off the government.
Exactly. And that'd probably be the best way to go about it without actually the government fully infringing on people.
Right.
So that's actually not a terrible idea. Moreover, gun violence in general. There's actually a correlation when it comes to gun violence, and it boils down to socioeconomic status, and not just socioeconomic status, but socioeconomic status based on a correlation of wealth basically income gap disparity.
Mm-hmm.
So in the United States, even our poorest are doing better than some middle class in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at that, that's kind of a bit of a thing too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think trying to get the, you know, basically bring more people out of poverty, I think at the end of the
Yeah.
day is going to ultimately help.
Oh, and overall prosperity lowers crime rates, just period.
Yeah, it does.
The United States is, I mean, we continue to see falling crime rates. You know, it was not safe to walk late at night in the 1980s in New York City
No.
and go in the subway. And, you know, I mean, sure, if you're downtown Manhattan, maybe. But, you know, you're in the Bronx, somewhere else, it was not safe. Now it is. And we're seeing that all over the U.S. And I think a lot of that just has to do with the prosperity. You know,
Yeah.
as, the world is getting better. As much as a lot of politicians would have you think it's terrible, it is getting better, and crime rate is dropping because of it.
Oh yeah, when it comes down to like low crime rates and overall economic prosperity, we were actually in the best time in human history as it current day, surprisingly, as opposed to what you hear. You know, I think liberties wise, we're not doing so hot.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But as far as all the major indicators, crime, you know, extreme poverty, we're not just talking like I can't afford a car. We're talking extreme poverty. You know, starvation around the world. We're doing way, like you said, it's the best time in human history. Which really you would have, like I said, a lot of politicians will not have you believe that,
Yeah,
but it really is.
yeah, that is true. And I thought I lost it. I hate when that happens.
Yeah, it's time to take a break anyway.
Yeah,
We
we'll
good?
take a quick break. We'll jump back into this here shortly.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the content. If you are, make sure to press that like and subscribe button right down there. And if there's any material and stuff you would like to see us cover, we're more than happy to do that for you as well. Hope to have some new content coming out for our Patreon subscribers. Those of you that are, you know, in the mood to do that, we also have one of those. Should be pretty easy to find us, the Donut Hole Show. And yeah.
Yeah, and once we get some more subscribers, we'll probably start a merch store, do some mugs, some hats, things like that. You know, we're just now starting out. Hopefully this episode got our audio quality fixed, and continue to move forward with for you guys, and offer more and more every week.
Yep. So thanks again, guys.
All right, guys, we're back from the break and had a moment to collect all my thoughts. Gun control debates really kind of boil my blood a little bit. And, you know, continuing along the lines of things that can be done that will actually, in effect, change will be cultural understanding. And not tolerating outright bigotry, because that's not cool. On the flip side of that, there does need to be the legitimate calling out of bad whenever you see bad. You know, personally, every Muslim person that I've ever personally interacted with have been great people. And that's a fact. You know, every Muslim that I have ever actually interacted with have been really great people, really kind people, really generous people, really open-hearted, awesome people. That said, if you look at where the vast majority of terrorism in the world comes from, it kind of comes from one source for the most part. You know, the vast majority of it. Obviously, you got crazy nut jobs like this jackass who did what he did, and I'm calling him out too. That's, you know, bigotry. Like I said, bigotry across the line should not be tolerated. You know, if you're saying, hey, all Muslims are, you know, terrible people, we should kill them all, that's not acceptable. That is absolutely not acceptable. But on the flip side, to not call out bad where you see bad, I think is bad. You know, ultimately, I mean, it's ultimately going to cause these kind of things. And to expect, I think every culture expects a certain level of assimilation.
Yes.
Within their culture.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, if, say, somebody comes to America, I do expect a certain level of Americanization. I'm not saying everybody needs to eat a cheeseburger. I'm not saying everybody needs to listen to Justin Bieber, because I don't like to listen to Justin Bieber. But I am expecting certain principles of openness as far as accepting of others and toleration.
Right.
I am expecting the idea of freedom to reign supreme. Those, like, true American ideals for us, that's what I expect. I expect you to say, you know, to not think that, you know, say, you know, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Catholic, I don't care. I don't want religion-based or theology-based laws being passed in our country. I want us to be a secular society when it comes to that. based on liberty, based on freedom, based on American ideals and principles.
That being said, we also don't need to demonize religious people.
Exactly. Religious people themselves should not be demonized, because at the end of the day, while you may or may not agree with their theology, they are, by and large, for the most part, very good people with good intentions. Again, you may not agree with this, that, the other. I mean, I'd be all for Islam if it wasn't for the no alcohol, no pork thing. You know, that kind of that's where they kind of turned me off. It's like I like bacon and I like to have a drink occasionally, so it's like you're losing me on that. But other than that, I mean, everything else seems pretty cool. You know.
Yeah, and also, the tolerance goes both ways too. I think free speech is more important than people realize.
It is.
Because when people, because anybody can say, I don't like this group, and that's fine. You can say that. You can say, I don't like them. I don't agree with their ideas. But what you cannot do is threaten violence. It's the fire in a crowded theater
Exactly.
thing. Is, because you hear this, people want to have hate speech laws, but in my opinion, that's just going to create more hate. Because when you have people feeling like they can't say what they want to say, and we already have that standard. We already have the standard of if it creates harm or physical harm to another person, you can't do that.
Exactly.
We do have free speech, but at the same time, I cannot get on Facebook and say, "Hey, all my Facebook friends, go attack Paul because he's an asshole."
He's an asshole, but you shouldn't attack Paul.
And then if somebody did attack you, I would be held liable.
Yeah.
So we already have that.
And I believe they have that in New Zealand as well.
Yeah.
So therefore, the fact this guy had already been calling for this, and other people had been calling for that, there was already a law broken that you could have nabbed this guy before he did anything.
Right.
But you didn't.
Right, because that's where the line is to me. Is you can sit there all day long and say, I don't like Muslims, I don't agree with their religion, I don't agree with what they do. That's fine. But as soon as you start talking about violence, that's where you cross the line.
Exactly. And I think you are onto something when you say something to the fact that you cannot speak out. The more the climate comes into a position where you can't speak your mind, as a general sense, saying, I don't like this, I do like that, the more closed off and isolated you feel, and that starts to mess up your brain a little bit.
Well, and these people that are obviously mentally defective anyway that commit crimes like this.
Only exacerbates the
it
problem.
exacerbates it, because if they feel like they can't say what they want to say or believe what they want to believe, and they feel like a pariah, and they're already a little bit off in the head, obviously, anybody who would do something like that has mental problems. It's going to exacerbate it.
Exactly. And then they're going to be further driven into these hate groups, whether it's a hate group of I hate Muslims, whether it's I am going to go off and join ISIS and become a jihadi, whether it's I'm going to, I hate everybody and I'm going to go be a neo-Nazi, whatever it is. The more you push the envelope of the social pariah and I'm not saying lovingly embrace neo-Nazis or anything, because they're not good people. But freedom of speech, like you said, is essential. But so is a social acceptance of. I think there is everybody you have to be socially acceptable or accepting of various cultures to an
Well,
to a degree.
and for example, there's in today's culture, we tend to be very polarized, so we don't see a lot of nuance. But there's a huge difference between, say, since we're speaking of Islam, Tommy Robinson, who is not a violent guy. He's been arrested several times. He basically speaks out against Sharia law. He actually has Muslim friends, and people just think he's a white supremacist. Well, he's not. He just doesn't like Sharia law. Some of the things he's seen happening in his communities, and he is a bit anti-Muslim. But there's a big difference between him and the skinhead.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to recognize as well, because we live in this polarized environment where we think Tommy Robinson, skinhead, same thing.
No.
And then you start oppressing the Tommy Robinsons. And it's like, okay, he doesn't like Islam. He disagrees with it a lot. He's not a skinhead. He's not committing violent acts against people. He's not calling for murders. And we also have to recognize that, because we can't identify the real threats if we're just lumping people all together. We have to be able to see the nuance and see where the person who is going to snap, we have to be able to see that, instead of just saying, oh, everybody's, on this political ideology is bad.
Or that we don't trust anybody in the citizenry enough to own firearms. I'm going to circle back to firearms now. And there is a very strong reason why I am very much a strong proponent of people's right to keep and bear arms. Obviously, that's an American principle, but I fundamentally think and feel that it is a basic human civil liberty and a human right. And the reason for it is because we have this horrible thing called democide. Now, if you look up democide, what that basically is the murder and genocide of people by the hands of their government. If you look at it from the year 1900 to the year 2000, over 243 million people were murdered. So if you break that down, that is over 2 million people a year, every year for 100 years, have died at the hands of the government, of their government. So their government went in and exterminated them, and they had no way to fight back. And usually it happens in countries that have a full monopoly of force.
Yeah.
Recently in Venezuela, prior to their economic debacle, they went in, Hugo Chavez went in, confiscated civilian firearms, destroyed them.
Except for those who signed up to be basically their version of brown shirts.
Exactly.
And then they were allowed to have firearms as a civilian. Even though they were not technically government officials, they were allowed to have them if they joined the little brown shirt gang.
Yeah. And we saw this same thing happen in Nazi Germany. We saw this happen in the Soviet Union.
Well, Nazi Germany, who did they take the weapons from first?
Jews.
Jews.
Yep.
And that should show people right there. And that's just blatant.
Yeah. So Jews in Nazi Germany, they took guns away from, and not only that, but they further restricted firearms for many German citizens as well.
Yes, but they started with the Jews.
Yeah, they started with the Jews. So we saw this in Nazi Germany. We saw this in the Soviet Union. We saw that we've seen this in Cambodia. We've seen this in mainland China. We've seen this all around the world, where all these despotic regimes come in and they basically confiscate civilian firearms, and then the next thing that happens is people are dying in mass, and probably the greatest human tragedy ever.
And
because these are the people in quote unquote in power. These are the people that the citizenry trust, and then that trust is betrayed, and they are murdered in mass.
And I really despise the argument of, oh, that'll never happen here.
And that's what everybody has always said. That you don't think that wasn't said in Nazi Germany. You don't think that wasn't said in the Soviet Union. You don't think that was said in all these places.
Exactly.
It was.
And half the people they murdered were their own revolutionaries. The Soviet Union is a great example. How many Bolsheviks were murdered?
Over half of them.
Yeah.
Right from the get-go.
And they were the ones saying, oh, we can trust this government. We want this new government. We want this revolution. And then they got murdered for their trouble. So it can happen anywhere at any time. As a matter of fact, I don't know if it was Tojo. It was one of the Japanese military higher-ups that when they had mentioned invading the west coast of the United States, they told the emperor that's a terrible idea. They said there's a rifle behind every blade of grass in the United States,
and at that time there was.
And they said because of the civilian gun ownership, we would never be able to accomplish it. And that right there goes to show you, foreign militaries feared the civilians, not the military. They feared the civilians.
Yeah, I mean they blew the hell out of our military. They did a pretty good job in Pearl Harbor, and our Pacific Fleet was like non-existent at that point.
Yeah, yeah, and they still feared the U.S. citizenry because they were so well armed.
Yeah, they fiddle farted around in Alaska a little bit, but that's about as far as they pushed it.
And back to the gun control thing, you look at places like Switzerland where it's basically a gun nut society. Everybody has firearms. I mean you see these pictures of these 20-year-old Swiss girls with rifles over their shoulder going to modern rifles going to the shooting range or competitions, but their gun crime is very low.
Yeah,
very, very low.
And it boils down to a cultural thing.
Exactly.
And that's what ultimately has to solve this. Because without the cultural aspect, without focusing on that, without focusing on the culture of violence, without focusing on social cohesion, without focusing on intolerance of promoting actual violence, and trying to better understand cultures, and frankly squashing some of the disinformation that's out there, and still protecting people's liberty to say, hey, I don't like this, I don't like that, but at the same time not allowing somebody to go as far as to say go kill that group, because that is not acceptable in any civil society.
Well, it's a big, once again, people try to make things black and white in today's world, but a lot of it is the difference between tolerance and acceptance. We have to tolerate this stuff.
We do.
Because otherwise that's where these crimes happen. You don't have to accept the way somebody else lives. You can disagree with it all you want, but you do have to tolerate it.
Exactly.
It's like a crying baby in a restaurant. You tolerate it.
Yeah.
You don't have to accept it and say, hey, it's great, because I understand there's a lot of people that don't want to say, Sharia law is great, or don't want to say that, homosexuality is great because they're religious or what have you. That's fine. You don't have to accept it, but you have to tolerate it.
Exactly. At the end of the day, that's really the best way to put it. Is you have to tolerate. Tolerance is what's needed, and not tolerance in the term that the left wants, which is acceptance.
Which is acceptance and glorification, right?
Yeah,
and
acceptance and
that's why I
glorification
say
are
there
not-
has to be a difference.
Exactly, and this is why things are nuanced. This is why things are not black and white. This is why everything is really truly a shade of gray, one way or the other. And frankly, we're all in the donut hole. Welcome to it.
Yeah,
So
and that creates more understanding when people understand that I have to tolerate something, but I don't have to accept it. Because they think it's all just the same thing now. Because the left has pushed that so much of tolerance is acceptance.
No.
It's not. Tolerance is you may not like it, but you have to tolerate it. You can't take an action against it because it's there. And sorry, buddy, you can speak out all you want, but you can't do anything about it because they're another human being with rights too.
exactly.
So you can tell them they're a dumbass all day long, but you can't actually do anything about it.
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, I think I've made this perfectly clear. I don't like Brussels sprouts. I don't like them. They taste like crap. I do not like to eat them. I don't like looking at them. I don't like smelling them. I don't like anything to do with them. But you know what? I support your right to eat Brussels sprouts. If you're into that, knock yourself out.
I'm actually probably going to eat some tonight. I have some in the fridge.
Oh, God.
Yeah. A little bacon and onion with them. It's delicious.
You have fun with that, man. I do not like Brussels sprouts, but I support your right to indulge your Brussels sproutness. I don't like them. I don't like them at all. Here I am. I'm vehemently opposed to Brussels sprouts, but you know what? If you're going to go to the supermarket and buy it, there ain't much I can do it. I have to tolerate and accept the fact you're going to eat Brussels sprouts and the fact that you may as well. Again, it's what it is. I have to tolerate it. I don't have to accept it. I don't have to accept Brussels sprouts myself, and I don't have to like them. But you know what? I accept the fact that they're there, and I tolerate the fact that they're there.
Yeah.
But it's not a full.
Yeah, you're not calling for a Brussels sprout ban.
I am not. I don't think that, if farmers want to grow Brussels sprout and people want to eat them, knock yourself out.
Yeah. And I think that comes a lot to the libertarian in me too, is that, there's a lot of stuff I don't like. And I've always talked about how when I talk to a lot of people who don't necessarily have that libertarian mindset, if I say I don't like something, they assume I think it should be illegal. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just stating my opinion that I don't like it. And it's become such a thing in American society because of the 24-hour news cycle, and they're always in your face about stuff, that somehow we need to legislate all this stuff. It's like, no, you can not like something and not call for laws to be made.
Exactly. At the same time, I mean, I like music. We know that. I don't like Justin Bieber, but I like music. I also I'm not really a big fan of the people that have like a massive subwoofer in their car and go, thudding around the neighborhood with it. Especially if they do it at 2 o'clock in the morning, then I do have a little.
Well, there is actually a law against that.
That's a noise ordinance.
It's
But
noise
in the middle of the
ordinance,
day, I don't like it. It's irritating, but
you have to
I
tolerate it.
tolerate it because it's.
I mean, you
what it
can't
is.
go over there with a crowbar and smash their speaker as much as you would love to, because God knows I would love to a lot of times.
But you know what? Hey,
But
knock
you
yourself
can't
out.
do that.
Nope.
You can't behave like
You
that.
have to tolerate it because
Yeah.
it's their right to go around and damage their hearing.
Yeah.
And
I think that circles back around to the gun control argument is that, people want to take away your rights because, first of all, because of something that already happened. You can never go back and fix that.
exactly.
We live the temporal nature of human beings. What's done is done. We cannot go back and fix that. We can try to be better working forward. But you know what? If you don't believe in guns, you can say this is a no gun household. We don't own guns, what have you. That's fine. But once again, it comes to the tolerance of the people. Like you said, it's an inalienable right. And that's the great thing about the U.S. Constitution is this concept that these rights are not given to us by a government. The government is there to defend those rights. Those rights are our natural rights as human beings. And that's, once again, a very libertarian viewpoint nowadays. But the government doesn't grant us anything. The government only takes away rights or protects them. And that's why the Constitution was such a great document, is that it actually recognized that. It was the first document in history to recognize that.
Yeah. And thankfully we have that. Unfortunately, our New Zealand friends don't. So I, again, encourage all of you to steadfast and not give an inch, because frankly, when you give an inch, they take a mile, or in your case, a kilometer.
Yeah. It's
But
well, it's the language of compromise, but it compromises you down to nothing. Because then there's another compromise a couple of years later. It's like they try to say in the U.S., and it's the reason why gun rights activists don't want to give a single inch, because then what happens next time?
And at the end of the day, ultimately, I mean, if there was a full on 110% guarantee, let's say, because there's always the notion here in the United States, we're talking about universal background checks, right? Which whenever you buy a firearm in the United States from a retailer, from any gun store, or any gun store that sets up shop at a gun show,
Yes, there is no gun show loophole. You still have to pass a background check from a gun retailer. Yes.
you go in, you fill out a 4437, I believe the form type is called. You go in, you fill one of those out, they call it in, they check, and you do a background check. If you pass, you can take your gun home. If you don't, you can't. No sale. That's how it works. We already have a quote unquote universal background check. The only time there's not a universal background check, if I say, "Hey Jason, can I borrow your Glock 17? I want to go to the gun range," and you say, "Sure, Paul. Here's Glock 17. You can go shoot it." And I can borrow his gun. I can go to the gun range. I can shoot his gun, give it back to him. We're all hunky dory. Or say somebody has a sister, and the sister has a crazy ex-boyfriend who's trying to scare her, and she doesn't own a gun yet. She's been to the range a few times. She knows how to safely handle it and operate it. And if not, you showed her already. And she wants to borrow a gun for home protection because this guy's freaking nuts. He's already thrown a brick through her window. Yeah, that should be okay. But with the quote-unquote universal background check system that they're pushing in the United States, I couldn't loan her my gun.
And it's already illegal. For example, like, say you asked to borrow my gun to go to the range, and I knew you were a felon. It's illegal for me to loan you that gun. That's already illegal. Then I would be held liable for anything that you did, because that is already illegal. So generally, when these transfers happen, like for example, everybody's had firearms passed down to them from their family. Well, your family is gonna know if you're a felon or not. Nine times out of 10.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are specific situations where maybe I haven't talked to dad in 20 years and he doesn't know what's going on. But in general, if the guy, your friend that you're loaning your firearm to, or your family member that you're passing down a firearm to, is a felon that's not allowed to own a firearm. You know that.
Exactly. But basically, and the way they actually proposed legislation like this in California, and the way they had it worded is, even if you and I went to the range together, and we're shooting, you got your lane here, I got my lane here, we're shooting, and you look over and say, "Oh, that's a cool gun, Paul, can I shoot it?" If I were to say, "Yeah, sure, come over to my lane and shoot my gun," as soon as you picked it up, that would be a felony in California. The way they were proposing
Even though you had your own firearm.
Even though we're hanging out together. If I just let you touch it, that's a felony. Because technically it was a transfer. And it was like, you can't do it. And that's where we fall into the universal background check. So I wouldn't even mind if it was, okay, you're going to inherit these guns, you get a background check performed. That's fine. Caveat being, if any other further type of gun legislation, because we need a stopgap. Because frankly, I think the Second Amendment is starting to get eroded.
Yeah.
Too much. And we need a stopgap measure basically that says, if gun laws go beyond this certain point, all gun laws become unconstitutional and have at it, take your government back.
And I wouldn't even have a problem of saying, okay, to do a private transfer, say, you're selling a shotgun to a guy on Craigslist that you've never met, that you're required to go to the local gun shop, pay them $20, they can run the paperwork, then you can proceed with the transfer. I wouldn't even have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Now, when it's passing down to family members, I would not think that would be necessary. Once again, you probably already have knowledge of what your family member's legal status is. But I wouldn't even have a problem of, say, the easiest thing to do, which this would be great for anybody who buys a lot of firearms, is you go get a card. It's a background check you have to renew every year, and you just go get a card that says, okay, you can do, you show it to, you can do a private transfer. I passed the background check. Here's my card to show that I have. And you get it done every so often, because obviously people can, But then again, I mean, we say all this, and there's several people that have committed crimes that had a perfectly clean background. So that wouldn't prevent them getting weapons. But then again, what would?
Nothing, really.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, somebody's crazy and deranged enough to go do crazy, violent things, they're going to do it.
Well, look at the gang violence in the U.S. Half the gang violence that happens, half these guys are not legally allowed to own firearms because they've been busted for different felonies before, and yet they still seem to get them anyway, and still seem to commit a lot of violence with them.
Yeah.
Everybody ignores that, though. Nobody wants to talk about the gang violence aspect. and organized crime, like you said too. Most of those guns are illegal as well.
Yeah. I know in Taiwan, occasionally there's the oddball shooting. Guns, like I said, are virtually non-existent. But when does it happen? It's usually when this gangster pisses off that gangster, or this guy owes this, organized crime guy X amount of gambling debt and goes to collect it, and things get ugly. That's when that kind of stuff happens. Oh, organized crime. Oh, illegal firearms. Who would have thought?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which I don't know the stats exactly, but I mean, majority of the gun crime in the U.S. is gang related. It makes you wonder how much a percentage of the U.S. Gun crime is committed with illegal weapons.
Well, moreover, actually, when it comes to, and this is the biggest problem too, is there's the notion between gun violence and gun murder. We need to separate these two, because gun murder, if you actually look at gun murder in the United States, we are nowhere near close to the top
Yeah.
at all.
Oh, I know a lot of South American countries are way.
There's
bigger than
European
us.
countries
Yeah.
that are above us
Yeah.
in gun murders every year per capita. No, our biggest gun violence, and this is why they always throw that gun violence statistic out. 3/4 of all gun deaths in the United States are suicides.
Yeah.
We have, what is it, 34,000 a year approximately gun violence and gun deaths in the United States.
Yeah.
Yeah, all but about 8,000 of those in a country of over 300 million people are suicides. So that's what, 8 minus 35. I'm bad at math. What's that, like 27? 20.
I don't.
Yeah, we'll say 27,000 of the 34,000 are suicides. The rest of them fall into murders.
Well, and they also consider gun violence. They will include accidents in that, hunting accidents.
Though it makes
somebody-
such a small.
It does,
That's-
but it's still disingenuous.
I know it's
is what I'm saying.
disingenuous, but
I know
that's-
it's a tiny percentage.
We're talking
but-
about less than 100 a year usually, so that's not even worth mentioning. No, most of them are suicides, and of that, and then you have your murders, and of that, 3/4 of those are gang related,
Yeah.
leaving a small little fraction of.
Which, if we're going to just make assumptions, because I don't know these numbers, and if anybody does have these numbers, post them in the comments for sure. I would say at least half of those gang murders are with weapons that they should not own in the first place.
Oh yeah,
because many of these gang members have criminal records and would not pass a background check.
all the ones that are pulling the triggers are the ones that shouldn't have them. Usually, what ends up happening with organized crime is there's a couple of people with clean backgrounds. They go and purchase a crap load of weapons, usually private sale because it's convenient, or these weapons are either acquired that way or they're acquired through home break-ins. Or there's a couple other avenues they can go as well.
So a lot of straw purchases.
Yeah, there's straw
Which
purchases.
are already illegal.
Which are illegal.
Yeah.
So, hey, just nobody was caught, but yeah, that was illegal. For this guy to buy a gun for that guy, but that's how it happened. They broke into places, stole weapons. They broke into gun stores, stole weapons. They broke into police stations, stole weapons. They break into places and steal weapons. Hey, who would have thought? So there's that, and there's also the occasional, smuggled in weapons, what sometimes they refer to as ghost guns, which are either manufactured from parts kits, which you can legally manufacture firearms in the United States, manufactured from parts kits. But generally speaking, they have somebody on staff who is competent, probably clean background, probably an engineering student who just likes to live quote unquote the gangsta life,
right?
Where he gets cheap booze and women all the time.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, they got this engineering student. He builds all the stuff for us, but he just hands it off.
Yeah.
Or like I said, the occasional ghost gun, the other type of ghost gun, which will come in from places like the Philippines or various other gun manufacturing countries, which gets smuggled in through customs. Hey, that's illegal too.
Yeah.
And they won't have proper serial numbers or whatever on them, and they'll just not be non-existent, untraceable guns. So that's how that goes. So.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the bottom line is all that stuff's already illegal.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. So that's what we've kind of established. All this stuff's illegal. Anyway, guys, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll get back to you guys here shortly. Alrighty, guys, we're back from the break. So we figured we'd do one last little fun thing to kind of wrap the segment up, I guess. Kind of change gears here a little bit. So obviously, we're both very big Second Amendment guys here in the States. Both of us have our carry permits, licenses, and all the stuff necessary to do so. So we decided to do a pocket dump. This is kind of what we carry with us every day. Oh, I forgot something. Yeah, there we go. So, full pocket dump on both of us, I believe.
Yep.
I guess, Jason, I'll let you go ahead and let you start first.
Wallet, keys, usually a cell phone, but I don't have it sitting here. Razor knife, I do a lot of different kind of work, and it's just any kind of knife always helps out. And the old Ruger LCP.
All right. So Ruger LCP 380, keys, wallet, razor knife. Kind of good setup there. Yeah, it's always got to be prepared. That kind of gets you going pretty much anything you need as far as what have you. I guess I'm a little bit more excessive. Obviously, cell phone, but we're using it right away.
Right, right.
So wallet. This one is actually the Taurus Spectrum 380. So there, spare mag, pen, Zippo, SOG folder, spare mag, and keys. So it's good to have what you might need on a regular average every day. So basically, if I'm leaving the house, I basically have all this stuff there in my pocket, ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, I really need to get a regular knife instead of the construction knife. That's
Actually, recently picked this up at Walmart. I hate going to Walmart, but I was there the other day for picking up a couple of things. I needed just a couple odds and ends. But I had a SOG knife before. It was great. It just was starting to really show its age, and I think I've had it for like 6 or 7 years now. And I saw this there. There was actually a pretty decent price listed on it. It was like $20. And SOG makes a good product because, like I said, I had their last knife I still have it, but I don't really use it as often because the blade is virtually dull as can be, and just the hinge mechanisms on it's starting to go a little bit finally. But yeah, I think this was listed for $20, and then all said and done, turns out they were clearancing it out. I got it for $5.
Oh wow, that's great.
So for a SOG, $5,
yeah,
win-win. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, basically, leave the house. The stuff's there. Because, obviously you need your wallet, you need your cell phone. I've already used that knife a few times to cut some things that I needed to cut, opening some packages and what have you. Zippo's good to have. You never know when you need a lighter. Spare mag. Ideally, this is one of the problems when it comes to concealed carry. Ideally, you want a full-size, full-frame firearm, duty-size weapon. But if you're just leaving the house for whatever, run to the store, just what have you, you don't really want to carry it.
That's why I ended up getting the 380 because it was just an ordeal with the larger frame handgun to deal with, and it caused me to where I wouldn't carry it. And like they say, the best gun to carry is one that you actually use.
Exactly.
And so I got this thing, and it's just easy to grab and go.
And at the end of the day, the 380 in your pocket's better than the 9mm or the 45 on your nightstand.
Yep.
Because that's not going to do any good. God forbid. You actually comes to the point you need it. Again, I would, the Taurus Spectrum's okay. It's a decent enough firearm, but at the same time, it's not going to be ideal. But it's I think the best kind of the same thing with the Ruger LCB. Both a very good compromise of size and portability, and they're really both of these are virtually the same size. This one's a little bigger with the little extended pinky bit of it. But at the end of the day, both of them easily concealable, and they're small enough to where and light enough to where there's no excuse. As long as you got your carry permit, there's no excuse not to carry that with you.
Right.
So, anyway, fun little pocket dump there. Anyway, guys, if you're enjoying the content here, be sure to shoot us make sure to press the like button, subscribe button, share with a friend. And if there's anything you'd like to see us, kind of cover, we'll do that as well. And I know one of the complaints we've got is our videos are long, so we're going to try to start shortening them down just a little bit, condense the material. Sometimes it's like today's episode was supposed to be shorter, but we
kind of went a little long.
Kind of went a little long because it's one of those topics that we kind of
maybe kind of get to where it's digestible on your commute or what have you if you just want to listen. And we've heard a lot of that, so
yeah. Well, again, guys, thanks for joining us here on the show, and from our studios here in Nashville. Top of the evening to you because it is St. Patty's Day.
Be safe, and we'll see you next week.
Have a good one. I said top of the evening.
Oh, the evening.
I said top of the evening. It is the evening. It's not the morning anymore.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, what were we?
Talk about economics and the coming presidential election.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much with that. Again, there's a lot more people that go in private, and like I said, they'll pull the lever because they don't want to be seen as a social pariah.
Yes.
At the end of the day. And I know there was one other thing I touched on it, and I said I was going to talk about it, but I totally skimmed over it during the segment. And that's the difference between assault weapons and assault rifles.
Yes.
And that is something that gets my goat every single time. Because even pro-gun people will sometimes fuck it up, and it just pisses me off. By the way, guys, welcome to the after segment. So an assault rifle, per definition, is a rifle fires an intermediate cartridge instead of a full-size battle rifle cartridge being a large caliber 30 caliber cartridge such as a 308, 30-06, etc., 7mm Mauser, 8mm Mauser, large cartridges. So we're talking smaller cartridges, 7.62 by 39, 5.5 by 5.6, 5.45 by 39, or 5.6. Yeah, all the various calibers that are smaller cartridges. And these rifles are actual military hardware, and they are capable of select fire, meaning they're a damn machine gun and classified as such. Whereas an assault weapon, and this is where people on the right will sometimes get a little stupid and say, well, assault weapons don't exist. Well, no, an assault weapon does exist, as much as any of us hate to admit it. It was a term coined in the late 1980s, early 1990s, which denoted semi-automatic, standard, normal firearms that had certain physical characteristics that looked scary. Physical characteristics, not functional characteristics, not mechanical characteristics, but physical characteristics. Cosmetic appearance characteristics that would be similar to an actual assault rifle. So, pistol grip, bayonet lugs, looking like scary and tactical. Magazine, forward of the pistol grip. Things like that. Muzzle brakes. Nothing that really affects the overall function of the firearm, that just make it look cool and or scary depending on your perspective. So that's kind of where that falls and lies. And people will erroneously interchange the two terms constantly, and it drives me nuts because they are two distinct different things. And the term assault weapon was coined specifically to deceive, because people prior knew what an assault rifle was because this was a well-established term. An assault rifle being a machine gun, being a legit military small arm, that people knew what this was. Assault weapon was a new term coined after the fact to make people and deceive the public into thinking assault rifles are, clearly, in mass circulation and machine guns are running around and running amok in the street, when that is clearly not the case. So assault weapons are a very disingenuous term used to describe the physical characteristics, cosmetic appearance characteristics of a normal semi-automatic rifle. Whereas an assault rifle is a firearm that is a legitimate machine gun, military small arm. So that gets my goat. And further moving into this argument of things, and I think this is where I was going to pick up with the whole presidential thing. You also have the notion of everybody calling when societies have elections and are a somewhat free society, that they are a democracy. For fuck's sake, the United States is not a democracy. We are a goddamn republic. And that should be, we are a constitutional republic. We are not a goddamn democracy. This really pisses me off every single time I hear, America's a democracy. Fucking hell it is. Democracies are fucking just as terrible as a dictatorship, and they are basically the same goddamn thing.
It's just mob rule.
That's what a democracy is. It's mob rule. It's, hey, we're voting to take your shit, and hey, there's one of you, there's two of us, we vote to take your shit. Guess what? It passes. We're taking your shit. That's not how things work.
Yeah.
Constitutional republic. We elect these assholes to go and make laws on our behalf. If we don't like what they did, we're going to elect them out.
And with our system of states, we just can't have, and we're a huge country. We can't have a select handful of the most populous states ruling, making the decisions for every other state.
Moreover, that's why we're supposed to also have somewhat of a denotion between federal and state powers in the United States. Because states are supposed to be able to enact laws that work for their state, whereas the federal government enacts very few select laws that are general for, and basically good for the entire country. Not everything that's good, for California is good for Wyoming, for example. So, I mean, this is ultimately what it boils down to. Wyoming needs to make laws that work for Wyoming. California needs to make laws that work for California. And at the end of the day, the United States government needs to make laws that are the very few select laws that are good for everybody. So, murdering people is bad. Human trafficking is bad. The federal government controls immigration. That's fine. But they don't need to legislate this, that, and the other. Various states should have the ability to make the laws that enact laws that work for their specific locale. Because what works in Wyoming may not work in California, and vice versa.
Like you can have a 90-mile-an-hour speed limit in Wyoming because it's large and flat, and in California that will cause a lot of deaths.
Exactly. 90 miles an hour for speed limit would probably not work really well in Los Angeles, even though there's assholes that drive 90 miles an hour in Los Angeles.
Everywhere. Yeah.
When it's not rush hour, because obviously you guys are going 0 miles an hour during rush hour. In Wyoming, even during rush hour, you could drive 90 miles an hour because there's 5 people.
Yeah.
Population-wise, I mean, seriously, what's the capital of Wyoming?
Cheyenne?
I think yeah. So when you're in Cheyenne, for 30 miles you can't really drive 90 miles an hour during rush hour because there are a few people.
Yeah.
But once you're outside of Cheyenne, zip along 90 miles an hour, you should be fine because there's nothing but nothing. So it works there. It doesn't work in Los Angeles. Which is why our government was set up the way it was. That's the way our government was set up, and it was done for freaking reason. And the fact that people seem to have lost this, and the fact that democracy and republic can become interchangeable terms, is also very disingenuous. Moreover, it was a leftist push because they are the Democrats. They want us to think that we are a democracy. They want to demonize the Republicans. The truth is, we are actually a republic. If you look at our founding documents, we are set up as a representative republic. Go look it up. And I'm not saying Republicans are right, because I disagree with those fuckers too. But that's what it is.
Yeah, states are not provinces. They're all semi-autonomous regions.
I mean, the initial notion of what the United States was, we were United States. States are, by definition, countries. We are a united set of small countries that enacted in a federation of sorts, a representative republic federation, in which the states go, we have representatives from each state, they go to a federal Congress. You look at the word Congress, look what it means. It's a group of people that get together. They get together and decide laws. You have a president that kind of oversees the executive thing, and you have the Supreme Court that's supposed to uphold and decide whether a law is constitutional or not. And that's pretty much the end of it for them. But they have now moved into a new crazy zone because the representatives in Congress don't do their damn job. The president has to take up a bunch of extra slack, and he kind of likes it. And the same thing with these jackasses in
the Supreme Court has to take up the extra slack.
Picking up extra slack because they like the power. And Congress just likes the money that they're making because that's all they're doing. They're making fucking shitloads of money. Look at everybody in Congress. They're just going freaking nuts. Making money hand over fist.
And it's really easy to get re-elected when you don't do anything controversial.
Exactly. Which
means you don't do anything at all.
Exactly, and that's exactly where we're at right now. And this is going to be the demise of our republic, as I'm sure you're clearly understanding. And we're getting a little more heated in the after. I kind of like the after show better than the regular show. This is more fun. We're too damn composed in the regular show. We just need to fucking let loose and let it fly.
Yeah. Depending on what we're talking about.
Yeah, I like the after show better. We guys are doing this. Welcome to the after donut hole. The crumbs. Welcome to the crumbs.
The crumbs.
I think that's what we're going to call it. We're going to call it the crumbs.
Oh, what did
Anyway, guys, thanks for showing up for the crumbs. Have yourself another cup of coffee. And,
good rant.
Yeah, fun little...
Very true. Everybody needs to listen to that. Because democracy, direct democracy, is a terrible thing.
It is a terrible thing.
It's the oppression of the majority.
Yep, that's all it is. And, it's just as bad as a dictatorship. And actually, frankly, in most cases, it's worse. So you got a dictator, and, 9 times out of 10, he's got kind of an idea what the hell he's doing. With direct democracy, you're letting idiots run amok. And that's even worse.
Yeah.
Frankly, I would prefer a benign dictatorship over just a general democracy in general. That's just fucking terrible.
Well, and who wouldn't vote themselves free money and free this and free that? And it's perfect example is when I used to work in country clubs. And the country clubs that were owned by their own members always financially fail. Because all they do is vote for more free stuff. They vote for cheaper food, cheaper drinks, more free. And, of course, they financially fail. So when they're directly owned by, when the people make the decisions themselves, of course they want free stuff.
Yeah.
Of course they want more money. You know, they're going to take your taxes and redistribute it to somebody else. Of course.
Yeah.
Give me what he's got. And when you have more people that have less money, they're going to vote for that. And that's just mob rule. That's not a good thing.
No, it's not. But we're devolving into a situation where laws, like legit constitutional law, this is what we got on this tangent was what you said about Colorado, right? Where they recently said, regardless of what their electoral votes do, they're going to just do popular vote.
Yeah.
Which would require a constitutional amendment to their state constitution.
Yeah.
Which they clearly didn't do. They just passed this new stupid law, which violates their state constitution, which is dumb as shit. So we're getting into this crazy town land where the actual legitimate laws of the land no longer seemingly apply. We just do whatever the fuck we want. And we're just going to vote whatever the fuck we want. And
well, and I also love the when people say, well, the electoral college isn't democracy, right? Because we're a republic.
Exactly.
That's absolutely correct. That's absolutely correct. It's not democracy.
And that's the point, is it's not democracy. We want a representative republic. We do not want a democracy, because that's not what the United States is supposed to be. That's not what any legitimate free society is.
Well, if that's the case, then why do we even have senators from a certain state?
Yeah, just vote on everything.
We just make federal senators, and we have 100 senators. Doesn't matter where they're from. Doesn't matter if they're all from California.
Yeah.
Hell, let's make them all from California and New York.
Yeah.
Screw the rest of you guys. Whatever. All the House of Representatives. Why do we have districts? We just need to put them up there and have 400 and how many of them there are, and just let the whole country decide. It's lunacy.
Yeah, and we'll do since there's 400, you get to vote 400 times too, and it's just an accumulation of the votes that count.
Yeah.
Right. So if you got second place, you're still in.
Yeah, we get to vote on each one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, we don't vote on each one. We just vote as a whoever gets the most votes. Right?
Oh yeah, you just have to tally them up. Yeah.
Yeah, at the end of the day. So XYZ, they got this many votes. The next person down the line, and the fact that the 339th person got 4 votes. Well, they got 4 votes. They're the next one in. That's cool. Let's do that. Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah.
And then we'd have a country where the temporary, whoever the most popular party, we'd have a one-party system. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think people don't understand is, it sounds good when it's your party, but what happens when it's the other party? Mm-hmm. Because that's what essentially it would be. If it was the majority of the people voted and the majority of the people supported whichever party, say party A, then their argument is that party A should be elected to everything because the majority of people support them.
Oh, of course.
No minority parties, no opposition parties. The people have spoken. The other 49% of the people can go screw off.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, they should. Screw it. Let's just go this whole democracy route.
Yeah.
While we're at it, let's not even do this transitional power thing. Let's just have one-time vote and vote it in, and then it's a dictatorship from here on out.
Yeah.
That just makes it easier.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Hey, Soviet Union, they voted.
Yeah, they did.
Had elections. Like you said before, even North Korea has elections, guys. Do. Keep that in mind.
Yep, they are, after all, the Democratic Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Mm-hmm. Democratics in the name. They all vote. Mm-hmm. And surprisingly, Kim Jong-un, he only gets about 99% of the vote, right?
Oh, yeah.
There is actually
1%.
Yeah.
Huh. So we're just going to let California and New York decide for everybody. Illinois,
yeah. And and a couple of those people, the representatives from those states, they're going to oversee some of the less downtrodden. They'll occasionally listen. Oh, what do you guys visit? Oh, that's a bad idea. Mm-hmm. We'll assign it to where we'll have one representative that covers like 5 states.
Yeah,
that's the
that's the garbage people.
The garbage people need a little voice.
Yeah, that's the people in between the oceans. That's the flyover country. That's garbage. They don't get a say.
We need to hear them every once in a while. Sometimes they say something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are deplorables after all.
Mm-hmm. I think we're going to end it there.
Yeah. That was good.